Hello everyone, this is TheNelston. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm here to talk about the Assassin Heavy Melee build. Now this thing was nerfed back in I believe 1.20, but now with the strength and dex changes of 1.20.3, it is now quite strong once again. So we'll be taking a look at the ways that it can be utilized, as well as some of the insane damage it can output in a very short amount of time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. So now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the items. For the helmet, we have the obsidian framed helmet. For the chestplate, we have the Taurus. For the leggings, we have the writhing growth. For the boots, we have the blind thrust. For ring number 1, we have fractured, as well as for ring number 2. We have Atlas for the bracelet. We have drain for the necklace. And finally, for the weapon, we have the anvil crawler with 3 tier 6 earth powders. Taking a look at the stats, we can see that the average DPS is about 14.2k with the single hit average of 27.8k, and of course the attack speed is super slow. The effective HP is 35.5k with a total HP of 19.2k, and the reason the EHP is so low is mostly because you have 0 agility. There's no natural HP regen, there's a decent amount of mana steal so you can proc vanish a lot more often. There's an effective lifesteal rate of 2.3k over 3 seconds, 78% chance to proc exploding, minus 14% walk speed bonus, and 10% XP bonus. Now, the damage on this might seem kind of low. You might be thinking, well, 14k DPS is not that great, especially compared to something like tierstack, which can do an insane amount of damage. This might not seem like a lot of damage, but I can show you some things that will massively improve your damage. For starters, you basically want to vanish every time you do a melee hit. So with vanish, you already push your single hit average up to 50k and your average DPS up to 25.5k. But the main damage in this build doesn't come from these single hits, but rather the quake that you do. So if you have all tier 6 earth powders and you do a quake spell while in vanish, you will do an average of 208,000 damage per hit in an area, that is. And that means, a non-crit average is 144k, and if you land a crit, you can do 275k damage. Yeah, it's pretty insane. Before I get into the demonstration, let's talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons of this build. The first big pro is that it is pretty easy to use. All you have to do is just vanish, go up to the enemy, hit them once, go back, vanish, hit the enemy, rinse and repeat until you charge up your quake, shift, left click, quake. It's basic, right? It's just basically heavy melee, so not too hard to learn. Another pro of this build is that it is incredibly strong. Now, while it doesn't have great DPS, that is fine, mostly because every hit that you do does a great amount of damage, so you can focus more on surviving and dodging hits, and only having to hit once every few seconds as opposed to constantly hitting and having to deal with weaving in and out of combat at the same time. Another pro of this build is that it has great crowd control. Now this might not make much intuitive sense since you're only attacking one target at a time, but the reason this build is good for crowd control is twofold. Number 1, it has the quake ability, which obviously hits in an area, so you will be able to clear out crowds with that. And number 2, the exploding percentage on this build is very high, so every time you kill something, you're going to blow up everything in like a 3-4 block radius of it. So yeah, it is very good for crowd control. And finally, I think the greatest pro of this build is that this is almost essentially a uniquely assassin build. What I mean by this is that no other class really has the ability to replicate what the assassin does with heavy melee. And this is because, well, the assassin has vanish, which has an astounding 80% damage bonus. So yeah, no other class could even come close to doing that sort of damage per hit. So if you want to play heavy melee, this is the only class you can do it on, and thus it is an extremely unique build. So what are some of the downsides of this build? Well, the first big one is that it is incredibly glassy. Now, it's not as glassy as, like earth, thunder, water, but it is still on the lower end of the EHP spectrum. So if you're looking for something that will keep you alive for a little bit longer, I would not recommend using this build. Another big issue is that this is, of course, a heavy melee, which means if you miss your attack, you basically just lose all of your DPS for the next 3-4 seconds. So it is extremely rough, and you need to make sure that you actually land your attacks. Another one is that this build is extraordinarily reliant on lifesteal. So if you do not have lifesteal, you will not be able to regenerate all your health back, and you are most likely going to die because of bad RNG. Let's go ahead and jump into the orange Wibble fight now. And there we go. You saw how easy that fight was, and you know how quick it was. So yeah, hopefully this should give you an idea of how strong the build is. Even though Orange Wibble has thunder immunity and most of my damage comes from thunder, I was still doing an insane amount of damage. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comment section below. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a dislike if you hated it, subscribe for more content like this, and as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.